What's going on, everybody? Brian J. B-Show Brian J. to be exact. This is Horror Reanimated for the week of June 15th, 2020. I don't know why that matters to you. You could be listening to this 6 months from now. God, I like this song. It is the pseudo echo, His Eyes, Friday the 13th, a new beginning instrumental hip-hop beat on the Stretch Money YouTube channel by Cashflow Productions and Cashflow Mixtapes. If you hear crickets, it is ungodly hot in my house, or at least in my office. It's beautiful outside, but I've got almost no airflow in my office when I record. So I've got the window cracked. I think it helps a little ambiance. Got some outside ambient noise, some crickets every once in a while, because we're talking once again about Friday the 13th. And I know we've done a lot of Friday the 13th on this series so far, but hey, it's one of the most popular franchises. It's one of my favorite franchises. So I think it makes sense, especially in the summertime. But something came out this week that I thought was right up our alley. A tweet by Stephen King about a novel idea that he had but never wrote and would probably never produce. So we're going to talk about that today. Jason, the first-hand account of Jason Voorhees. We're going to talk about that in just a second. But first, friendly reminder, Horror Reanimated is a what-if podcast where we talk about situations that never happened, unmade scripts, dead concepts, films that were lost in development hell, and our own personal ideas at times. We do this every week just about, and if you want to show us some support and love, go wherever you listen to the podcast, whether it's Apple, whether it's Google, Stitcher, even on YouTube. Leave us a review. It helps us with our exposure and helps bring us to new ears. So thank you very much for those of you who've been supporting us. I've got a lot of good ideas from my buddy Jock Quixote. I don't know, his name changed on Twitter, but he keeps sending me stuff all the time, and I think next week I'm going to do one that he was thinking of, but I'm not going to tell you what it is just yet. I'm going to save that for next week or the following week. So you can follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/horrorreanimated. Simple enough. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at bshowbrian. And if you have any ideas for the show or anything you want me to take a look at that I may not have seen before, or something that you're excited about, or if you have an opinion or you have a different take on something, those are always welcome too, and I'll read them on air if they're decent and coherent. bshowbrian@gmail.com. All right, so now we're getting into the show at hand, the task at hand. And I have to say, it was a little surprising, this tweet that I saw today from Stephen King, the world's preeminent horror novelist. And I'm just going to read the series of tweets that he sent out, 2 days ago, by the time I'm recording this. So, first one said, the best novel idea I never wrote, and probably never will, is Jason, the first-person narrative of Jason Voorhees and his hellish fate, killed over and over again at Crystal Lake. What a hellish existential fate. I've never thought of, to be honest, and I don't know how many people have thought of this, I'm sure someone has, but from a philosophical standpoint, I've never thought of that before. I've never thought of that about, it's, some would say it's a gift, right? And I know Mrs. Voorhees in the Freddy versus Jason movie, I think it was, I don't know if it was Pamela Voorhees or if it was Freddy pretending to be Pamela Voorhees. But he said something about, Jason, you're special, you have a gift, you can't die. Something to that extent. I never thought of it as a curse. But it really is. And it's a really good point. And no shit, it's by one of the world's preeminent horror narrative writers. The next one was just thinking about, and I saw a lot of clickbait articles from, Joe Blow and Cinema Blend and stuff. Stephen King wants to make this film. No, he doesn't. His follow-up tweet was, just thinking about the legal thicket one would have to go through to get permissions makes my head ache. And my heart, that too. But gosh, shouldn't someone tell Jason's side of the story? And then the third one, which to me is the most promising, Blumhouse could do it as a movie. That, again, would be a huge legal battle. Some pretty interesting points brought up. As I mentioned, I never thought of Jason dying and coming back to life as a curse. I always thought of it as an advantage. And I think you could start there. And again, I'm not going to go through and give my complete narrative opinion because I haven't sketched or written anything out. This is just going to be one of those free-flowing shows, probably around 30, 40 minutes. So I appreciate you guys. I try to be conscious of your time. And I try to give you as much as I can in a short amount of time so that it's worth your while. And hopefully you return the favor by coming back and telling people about the show. But looking at this idea, so let's start here. Let's start with that curse, that burden that Jason has, where over and over again, let's think of the scope of the series. Depending on where you hold your belief in the mythology of Jason Voorhees, Jason first died in 1958? 1959? Was that it? But let's say late 50s. He's presumably been dying and coming back to life. Since then. So what, now we're into, if there's still a Jason running around out there, now we're looking at, 50 years. 40, almost 50 years. It's a never-ending deal. It's a struggle. Could you, imagine that, as Stephen King said, that hellish existential fate of Jason Voorhees. He can't die. No rest for the wicked, right? No rest for the wicked. I wouldn't want to be... It's almost like a reverse... as far as morality goes, polarity, wow, that's hard to say. It's almost polar opposite of, Quantum Leap. And if you start there, then is it a karma thing? Let's look at the family. And again, this is, depending on the mythology you follow, Pamela is for sure evil, right? Some say, and this is up for debate, this would be great to revisit with another guest. But was Pamela evil, or is she driven crazy by the death of her son? That's the thing to consider, right? Because if Pamela was crazy and she'd been doing other things, like other criminal acts or other terrible things, then in that case, maybe it's karma for a life of wrongdoing, right? It's something more cosmic and spiritual, right? It's the universe punishing her, the sins of the father, in this case the mother. Or hey, look at the sins of the father, Elias. That's supposed to be his name, right? Elias Voorhees. He was written into part 6, but taken out ultimately. But they've never delved into that as far as... I know some of the comics have talked about Elias. And I know Jason Goes to Hell tried to do something with the with the family legacy and all that. I like Adam Marcus. I think he gets a bum rap. I think he was handed a raw deal. The movie's just terrible, and I think, I don't know. I might do a horror history on that one at some point, because I used to be a staunch, Adam Marcus is terrible. He helped ruin the Friday the 13th franchise, and I've now come to understand that he was trying to serve some masters, and he was over his head, but it's more of like the Sean Cunningham New Line producers intervening type stuff than really was his fault. So I got to cut him a break there. But they tried to delve into the family situation a little bit, but no one really has. So is it like a karma thing? My name is Jason. Maybe maybe the film should be called My Name is Jason. And is Jason trying instead of My Name is Earl, trying to oh my god, it could be a comedy. I usually hate horror comedies. Mr. Positive would probably like this idea, though. This is probably taking it in a different direction. Imagine him, like, My Name is Earl style. Jason has a list, right, of all the people he's killed. And he's going around trying to make good on the list, like by going to the families and the survivors and stuff. And everyone just keeps attacking him. And so he almost like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, where I can't stop. It's late. It's been a long day. I've gone through a lot of emotional shit today. You guys don't care to listen to, but I'm fried. I think it makes for good shows. But looking at it from that standpoint, just imagine like Jason's actually trying. Jason's actually trying to make good on all of his past, right? And he's out knocking on doors and finding, like, stalking. It's not stalking, he's tracking people down, like trying to make good on stuff. And they're attacking him, so he's defending himself. And then when he defends himself, he kills them. Like, I can imagine like the laugh track, like, oh, he's got a friend helping him out. Oh, Jason. After he's like sliced someone's head off in defense, Anyway, so let's get back to reality here. But no, yeah, looking at it from a karma standpoint, it could be a family thing, which would be fun to dive into. One of the biggest stumbling. God, I sound like Alf tonight. Freaking Gordon Shumway. A penny for your thoughts, Willie. Jesus Christ. I should just do the rest of the show, since I'm already fried, in Alf's voice. So what do you think about Stephen King writing the Jason sequel? I think it's a laugh, Willie. Anyway, I told you I'm fried tonight. Anyway, I just keep saying anyway. Christ almighty, where am I? Coffee. Crystal Lake. So, one of the big stumbling blocks, as I was trying to say before I delved into a Gordon Shumway impression, is Jason not speaking and communicating. So how are you going to tell a first-person narrative account through the eyes or the voice of someone who doesn't speak? And I think, Stephen King could figure that out. But I realized something thinking about this a day or two ago when I first saw the tweets. And it's something I've never seen brought up anywhere. Call it a fan theory. Maybe I'll put it on horror history. I don't know. But everyone assumes Jason can't talk. Everyone assumes Jason is mentally deficient, right? Intellectually deficient. I don't agree. I think Jason can talk, or could talk at some point. And here's why. And I know the the lineage of the film, the narrative, what's the word I'm looking for? The canon of the film gets kind of sliced and diced as they went. But in the first film, when Pamela is chasing Alice, what does she do? She hallucinates Jason talking to her. She mimics Jason's voice. Kill her, mommy, kill her. Don't let her get away. I won't, Jason. That's where we get the famous kill her, mommy. For those of you who did not know that. But for those of us who do, I mean, that's been a big clue right there. That at some point, at least, Jason could speak. And then if you watch, I think it's part 3 and 4. Both Ted White from part 4 and, who's the English guy from part 3? I think he did a fantastic job. I'm going to have to magic of television this one. Didn't have to look it up. Richard Brooker. Both of those guys verbalized as Jason. They didn't say anything. But you could hear him grunting. You could hear them wince when they recoiled from getting stabbed or hit or something. So if you figure all that in, I think Jason can talk. I think he chooses not to. And I don't think that's something I've never, in all my years of lurking around message boards and discussing things with people, it's something I've never seen talked about before. No one's ever connected those dots, and maybe it's far-fetched, and maybe that's why. But if you look at the first film, and to be fair, in the first film, Jason was never intended to be alive. But that character of Jason, the son of Pamela Voorhees, the one who drowned at Crystal Lake, who ended up coming back in part 2, he could talk. Because unless she was completely crazy, no one ever said he couldn't talk, and why would she verbalize him talking to her? It was that, honestly, it's been in plain sight for 40 years. It's one of the most important pieces of the film. It's become a soundbite that's been used. It is Jason's signature. The echoing consonant sounds of the K and the M, kill mom, that has become, is probably bigger in pop culture at some point than the Halloween music. But John Carpenter's, the song is a song. It's different on a different level. But everyone knows, even if they can't place it that it's Jason, if they hear, it's familiar to them. So, I mean, it's been in plain sight. One of the most important pieces of that puzzle. I think Jason can talk. So now we're talking. To pardon the pun. Now we're talking. Now it's a little bit more feasible. Now it's a little less far-fetched. So if you have a character that can talk, not that he should, that's up for debate. But if you do this, King's comment was, should someone tell Jason's side of the story? Well, now if you're going into the realm of Jason can talk, what is his motive? Because if he can talk, and if he was just hydrocephalic but he wasn't mentally retarded, now if he understands good and evil, he's even more evil than before. So that's one of the big things that I've always taken from the series is when Ginny, who was supposed to be a child psychologist or a psychology major, in the second film when they're drinking at the bar, and she says, he's running around, he's just looking for his mommy, scared, waiting for his mommy to return, and he's a frightened, mentally challenged person. That to me is so sympathetic that when I hear that, it almost makes me, it's like it's hard to feel good about people vanquishing Jason at that point. It's almost like it almost becomes a necessary evil action to undertake. And that's something that no one's ever explored in the cinematic universe anyway, is can Jason be held accountable for his actions? because of his perceived mental challenges? Does he understand what he's doing? Can he be held accountable? Well, if you start looking at the fact that he probably can talk, or could at some point, or was intended to originally, now you look at it as, okay, I can understand if it's just, there's a guy out there in the woods, he's a maniac, he does not understand what he's doing, his moral compass is off because of the crazy family that he lived with, the situation, and if someone's got to take him out because he's attacking people, then so be it. It's sad, but it's got to happen, right? Like a rabid dog, in a way. Like no one, like Cujo. Same. There it is. Michael Myers is Jaws on land. Jason is Cujo. And not to diminish a human being down to a dog. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying mentally challenged people. I'm not saying that they're subhuman. My point is the family's beloved dog, right? Gets sick, something happens, it turns. Or when cats go feral, that happens sometimes. Cats go wild, they go feral. You have this cute little kitty, and all of a sudden it just goes crazy, and you got to let it out the door, and little Jimmy's not going to see it again. The rabid dog, you got to put it down. There's nothing you can do for it. It's going to attack, and if it attacks your kid, you're not just going to sit by and go, oh, well, it's Charlie. We had so many memories with Charlie. I can't protect my kid. No. You're going to do what you got to do. So if you're out in the woods and you see a hockey mask coming at you, you're not going to defend yourself and fight back just because you know that Jason's mentally challenged. That is a great conundrum they've never gotten into. Never explored that. And I think could take the series in not a different direction, but at least, when we look at the series, you've got the first few, which to me they're truly, obviously, that they made the most money. They're the most beloved. They're really the most true to series form and intent. But, they tried different things. Part 6 was kind of meta and, mimicked an old Universal monster movie in some way. Some of those tropes. Part 7 was like Carrie versus Jason. Part 8, they took him to Manhattan. Part 9 was a completely different animal, and then Freddy versus Jason. So the later films each had a different approach. You could explore that idea of, is it moral to inflict any kind of punishment on a character like Jason because of perceived mental deficiency? It'd be like, when grandma, here's a really good analogy. If grandma has Alzheimer's, and she attacks somebody. You can't have grandma attacking people, but is it right to take action against her? That's that moral dilemma that we live with. We live with those moral decisions every day. Is it right? Should we do it? I hate to bring up politics or current events, but when you look at two cases, of a police officer causing a young man's death, not all cases are equal. And I'm not saying they deserve it. But I have much more sympathy for an officer who is trying to apprehend someone who's non-cooperative and has a firearm on them than something happening by mistake, even though it's wrong. I have more sympathy for them because at least maybe they, if they would have let them up, maybe they felt like they would have been shot. I can understand... I can understand why people have more sympathy for that situation, as opposed to an unarmed man just being knelt on for, 8 minutes and 42 seconds, or 8 minutes 24 seconds. So, moral dilemma. What do we do? I think that's something that could be explored with Jason, especially with this. Imagine if Jason's not. Imagine if Jason isn't. And here's the other thing too, is not only is there proof that Jason can talk or could talk at some point, there's also proof that Jason is intelligent. If you watch the way he sets up victims, if you watch the way he stalks, that intelligence, he's like a cat. He's setting traps. He's using weapons. He's doing things creatively. He's playing. I think he's just crazy. So, before I get to this next point, I was just going to spit out because I'm ADD and it hit me. I think those are some of the questions that could be answered by a film like this. But as my next point was going to bring up, I also think they could be detrimental to the character in the series. Because if you're having Jason communicate, whether that's talking, writing, signing like Coco the gorilla, I don't know. But if you have Jason communicating in some form or fashion, and now you define what his deal is, if he doesn't comprehend, if he is deranged and he's crazy and he enjoys what he does, you run the risk in some ways of demystifying him. But at the same time, after 40 years, after so many failed attempts at reboots and sequels and all sorts of stuff, should you take it in a different direction? You know, I really liked the direction that the remake or the reboot in, was it 2009? I liked the direction and what they did with Jason. And if you take, you know, King's idea and intertwine it with that, I could see Jason sitting in his place, keeping some sort of journal. And maybe he's got basic education because he died, or he, you know, was how old when his mom died? You know, he was a kid. Or even if he was a young adult and he'd just been out there the whole time. We could get answers. That's another thing, too, that I didn't even think about, is we could get a lot of answers as far as what happened. So not just like what his motivations are, what his deal is, what his hang-ups are, but also what happened. You know, did he die? Did he drown? Was he lost? Was she just crazy? Some have speculated that Jason never drowned and she just made it up. Did Jason live with her in the woods? Was she insane? You know, did in the first film, you know, early on when she says Jason died, maybe there was no incident. Maybe she just made it up in her head to justify killing these people. You know, she was a young mother. Maybe she envied their youth and their beauty and their freedom, and here she is slaving over a stove and scraping grease and crud off of a grill or out of an oven. Who knows? These are questions that could be answered with this idea. You know, Jason doesn't seem to fixate on any given type. Alice is like a strawberry blonde, Ginny's a blonde, Chris is brunette, Tommy Jarvis becomes his enemy, but his sister Trish is a blonde. None of them really look, I mean, they're around the same age because they're young, but none of them really look all that similar. And it's not like Halloween where he's fixating on, like, I think that's the other thing too. Is Jason just a territorial killer? Is Jason not your typical sociopath killer, like a Night Stalker or a Ted Bundy or someone like that? Is Jason just a deranged? What's the word I'm looking for? Survivalist in a way. Like where, and I hate to bring up Michael Myers because I talk Halloween a lot, but Michael Myers is a psychopathic, he is along the lines of a Night Stalker, a Ted Bundy. There's something sexual about his murders, especially in the first film. Motivation gets different as you go along. But there's definitely some psychosexual aspect to Michael's killing. And I was watching, there's a series from Investigation Discovery. If you have cable or satellite and you have the ID Go app, check out Dark Minds. It's a series where a true crime author actually investigates these cold cases And he has the help of a former FBI psychological profiler and a convicted criminal. And the criminal is offering all these different details. And one in particular reminded me of Jason Voorhees, or of Michael Myers. But technically, there was another one that reminded me of Jason, too. There was these girls that all went, these people that were murdered up in Maine, I think it was. Maine, Vermont, that area. Along the highway. People were picked up from rides or attacked on the roadside. And maybe Jason's just a territorial killer. I mean, there's a lot of these unanswered questions. And leaving things ambiguous is great when you're talking 1, 2, 3, 4 movies. But now we're talking about decades after the fact here. You know, even Frankenstein's monster, who I guess could accurately be called Frankenstein, he even spoke at some points in some of the films. Do you look at Jason as a Frankenstein-like situation? In the film Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I know it's probably in a couple others, and probably in the book, if I remember right, the creature is sitting in front of his creator. And he says something along the lines of, you gave me these emotions, you gave me this body, you gave me this brain, you didn't teach me how to use it. There's great allegory there for broken homes and kids growing up with without parents being involved and around. So, I mean, is Jason more like the creature from Frankenstein? He's young, sheltered. And if we dial this has become more of a Voorhees family discussion right now. Because, you know, what are you going to do? Predict what Stephen King would write in a first-person Jason film? Come on. I'd like to see it. It'd be interesting. I'd like to read his version, because Hollywood has not been too kind to a lot of Stephen King's films. But if she was very protective of her son, and they did have a strange family dynamic, then maybe that is the case. Maybe young Jason was awkward. He was deformed, but still intelligent, or at least intelligent enough to understand right and wrong and formulate his plots, I guess. And maybe they kept him away from people until she got a job, and then she was trying to, you know, she takes him to the camp so he has things to do and try to make friends, but he's awkward and she's awkward and they're weird people. So maybe he is sheltered. Maybe he doesn't know. And maybe Jason, young Jason, her special boy, maybe he's not a special boy because he's special, you know, like special ed. Maybe he's special because he also has those tendencies. So maybe young Jason is showing signs of psychopathy or whatever you want to call it. And she keeps him away from people because she doesn't want anyone to take her special boy away from her. He's all she has. She's his whole world. And then maybe that's why, if he did drown, maybe that's why no one saved him. Maybe that's why no one was paying attention to him. Maybe, how about this? Maybe Jason didn't drown because the counselors weren't watching him or the lifeguards weren't watching him. Maybe he drowned because Pamela wasn't watching him. Wouldn't that be the ultimate irony? Pamela wasn't paying attention to him. For some reason, I don't know why. Jason wanders out into the, you know, no one will play with him. He's got no friends. He's the weird kid around camp. And maybe he's got violent tendencies. So maybe people just kind of stay away from him, and maybe his mom didn't have her eye on the ball. and he wandered off and drowned. So since she couldn't maybe blame herself, she lashed out and was killing other people. To me, that would fit more in with Harry Manfredini said something really good on the Crystal Lake Memories documentary. If you haven't seen it, go check it out. But he said he was talking to Betsy Palmer, and when they watched the film, he said that point when you say he wasn't a very good swimmer and you kind of laugh and smile. He said you're crazy, you know you're crazy, and you don't care. And that's the way she played it. So if you look at Pamela in that light, that she is crazy, that she doesn't care, that she is nutso, to me it made more sense if like she had a hand in his drowning somehow. Oh my God, guys. What if she drowned Jason? What if Pamela drowned Jason? And she either couldn't bring herself to admit it, or that was her cover story, that Jason drowned. And maybe, for some reason, I don't know why, but when Pamela died... Okay, hang on. What if... Okay, here's another what if. What if Pamela drowned Jason, and she killed him, but then he came back to life? And because she was afraid they would take her little boy away, she kept him sheltered in the woods. And she, maybe they lived there together, as I mentioned. And she kept him tucked away from, the citizens of the area, and it was a sparsely populated place. But then she was so messed up and wrought with grief that she went out and would exact her revenge on everybody else. And that was her cover. Ah, man, that's another rabbit hole to go down. And then just imagine Jason talking about whether he did die and come back and what he's going through. I'm trying to think. It would almost be like Groundhog Day in a way. Kane Hodder in Groundhog Day. Friday the 13th. Groundhog Day is now in June. Excuse me. Yeah, see that just now I'm just scratching the surface on some of this stuff. On some of the different avenues you could go into. Pamela killed him, or Elias killed him, and to protect her husband, maybe she lied and said that he let her drown. Or maybe maybe Pamela was having an affair and the man drowned Jason. See, now I'm just going off topic and just speculating here, but man, Stephen King, first person Jason. Well, what would you do? Would it be like Hardcore Harry or whatever the guy's name was? Hardcore Henry. It was a first person, like video game style. Do you show Jason like frying up cans of baked beans on the fire in his little shack? Yeah, I don't know. It's such a bizarre concept to wrap your head around. Would it be like the Ted Bundy documentary, or the Ted Bundy movie that they made with Zac Efron, where it follows him and it follows his girl, but it's not really told by him? I guess first person would be told by Jason. Yeah, it's just so bizarre. I'll leave you with this. I want to know what you guys think of this idea. There's been a lot of talk on social media. Obviously, Stephen King was really excited about it, and maybe it would be a project that only a guy like Stephen King could really tackle and make it work, because he is that creative a person. But I do think the idea of not only living a Groundhog Day-like existence, but in such... You know what? If you watched AHS 84, that's kind of what they did in a way. These people, their souls were bound to this campground, and they couldn't be free. But see, that's the other conundrum. Like, if Jason has enough intelligence and enough mental wherewithal to be documenting his struggles or his life, because the character, if you're following the character, if it's a first person, let's talk about this too. I'm gonna have to bring my brother in to talk about this on a later episode. If to have a first person story, the character has to be able to communicate in some way. Because if not, it'll be third person. It'll be Jason did this and Jason did that. And even if you're following him as the main character, this would have to be almost like Frankenstein, right? Because didn't the creature, I think the book, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, I think the creature was the narrator. I believe. I may be remembering that incorrectly from my high school literature days. But I don't know, man. It just seems like such a bizarre take that it could work. It's just, how do you get there? How do you tell that story? And to do that, you really have to at least mess with or solidify the what's the word that keeps escaping me tonight, man? The canon or the legend. I'm trying to think. I'm fried tonight, so I can't even think of the word. But you really would have to mess with what Jason is, or at least define it more in more concrete terms to tell that story. Because Jason, though a central character, was kept very basic, and he was an outlier. You always followed the dame in distress. You always followed the people around her, the counselors. You always followed all these different people. Even his mom had more depth in some ways. So yeah, it'd be really interesting, because Jason was always kept. He was always almost this phantom that would come in and out of the situation, as opposed to someone who was there and present and developing on screen. So yeah, really weird, really weird. But what do you guys think? bshowbrian@gmail.com with your thoughts. Like I said, if they're good and if they're coherent, then I'll share them next week, or maybe even if I get my brother to talk about, from a literature standpoint, how that would work. Trying to go to my mentions to find some stuff. But you can also, again, follow me on Twitter @bshowbrian. You can follow me on Instagram, the same. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not seeing my mentions about last week's show. That's right, because we didn't have last week's show. Anyway, I want to thank some people for following. Isaac Thorne, he's been following me for a while. Harrison Smith, shout out to him. I know he was listening a while back. I don't know if he still is. You should check out his cinema. No, what is it? It's cinema, Cynema. It's like cynical cinema. B. Harrison Smith. So shout out to him. He gave me some good feedback early on. I appreciated that. Slasher Ant is also another friend of mine. Brian Long. Rivers Johansson. Oh, that's going to be another podcast to check out. Let me see. Got to find his name of his podcast. Yeah, he's a blues musician, a horror guy, pro wrestling fan. He's the co-creator of Make Darker, which is a podcast coming up. So go check him out. He's got some music. He's got some podcast stuff coming up pretty soon. He's a cool guy. We've been talking a little bit back and forth on the old Twitter there. Jock Tastico used to be Jacques Quixote. I think that's it for now, because I had a bunch. Last week, JR at QGUNK. My buddy Drew Yari, John Draper. And if I forgot you, Drew Yari, I already said Drew. So yeah, if I forgot you, hit me up, man. Let me know. I apologize. But yeah, let me know what you think. It's really bizarre, like I said. Stephen King may be the only one to be able to pull this off, but there was a scene in one of the unmade Friday the 13th reboot scripts where Jason sticks his head in a cop car to get one of the women who's running from him, and he unmasks, and you think it's going to be like this poignant, like this sad look on his face, but he just looks like, it's like he has the face of a baby, and he's just smiling from ear to ear because he's going to enjoy what he's going to do. So I thought that was a nice touch, because especially if you're going to keep it going, Jason needs to be... Sorry, guys. Jason needs to be more, I think, outwardly deliberate. He's deliberate in his actions. Why would he not be deliberate in his thought process? So I'm on the fence there that I think they could delve into what he does and why he does it. You could either do a really bad job or do a really good job. It just depends. But Stephen King, under other circumstances, would be up to the task. But that's it for this week. My name is B. Show Brian J. Thank you for checking me out. Don't forget, if you, wherever you listen, just if you could help me out to show your support. I'm not asking for Patreon donations or money or anything like that. Just leave me a review. Go leave me a review, preferably 5-star, some good words, and share with people you think would enjoy this podcast. And if you have ideas, as I mentioned, bshowbrian@gmail.com. Hit me up. Let me know what you think, and if there's any fan fiction or unmade scripts floating out there that I should be reading. So, peace, everybody. See you next week.